Hey guys, this is Nerd Taku Podcast. I am your host, Eli. With me is my co-host, Ben.
Hey guys, how's it going?
This is another TV series review. We watch it so you don't have to. This week, we'll be reviewing the TV series The Bear. Spoiler warnings ahead. Ben, are there spoilers?
Most definitely.
Director, Christopher Storer. Jonah Callow. Main cast, Jeremy Allen White, Ebon Moss Bachrach, and Ayo Edebiri. Ben, this TV series did a very unconventional thing. This is very unconventional. When you see the latest in like HBO, Netflix, Hulu, when they do these 8 to 10 episodes, you expect an hour of substance. You expect like 45 minutes, right?
Pretty close to, yeah.
Yeah. So when you think about it, it's very unconventional to see a 30-minute TV show. 30 minutes for just 8 episodes. Episode 7 being 20 minutes. And the last episode being what the standard should be, 48. And the experience I had was there were moments where I connected a little bit with the characters, but some of them I just could never connect. But there was like points where I enjoyed the mission that the main character was doing, Carmy was doing. But I don't know. How'd you feel?
I was expecting more of I understand where they went with it, but the main plot was not executed in a way that I was expecting. I get how Carmy was faced with these trials trying to get his restaurant going, but I don't like how it was executed. I was pretty underwhelmed with how much hype this show got. I didn't really enjoy it.
Yeah, no, I could see where some of the underwhelming parts were for me as well. But throughout my experience, I enjoyed it because I think personally I've lived in that city lifestyle for a little while. So I recognize like and I work in a fast food kitchen, so like and I just know the environment a little bit. Not like that. I don't know the fine dining experience. I work fast food. Like, come on. Fast food is like telling me I cook lean cuisine for a Michelin star restaurant. That's not saying much, but I understand like the fast pacedness and the intensity of it. But so let's go through and give the synopsis of this show. As what IMDb gives it, a young chef from the fine dining world returns to Chicago to run his family sandwich shop. It's very simple on IMDb. It's very just straight there. And that's what you got. That's what you got in this story is that this guy who they try to explain that he got it from his brother who died because he killed himself at one of the bridges in Chicago. And it was his mission to keep it going. Like that's what he wanted. And from the beginning, what another trial after another, this guy's like basically getting the shit kicked out of him the whole time mentally. And he's let his life before this affect him in this restaurant. And you can just see the struggles he's going through and the overall like arching anxiety he's dealing with. And I knew that the overall story was them trying to show what anxiety is and how it affects this main character because he has extreme anxiety. Like no one, like by when episode 7 showed up, that was like, holy crap, you have way too much anxiety to be doing this. So I don't know how they're going to be releasing a season 2 because that comes out in June. And the way it ended, I was just like, okay, they left it open for a season 2, but I don't know what's going to be next. Okay, my overall rating for the show was 8.25. What'd you give it, Ben?
I gave it a 6.75.
On IMDb, it is rated as an 8.4 out of 10 with 88,000 people voting on it. So Let's start with plot.
I did give the plot a 1.
I gave the plot a 0.75.
I gave it a 1 because what its story is telling is the story of this kid who's coming back from a high-end restaurant to take care of his family's shop that his brother had left him after he killed himself. That is what you get throughout the whole series. And it's his trials trying to get this sandwich shop stronger, and not everybody in the restaurant is up for how he's trying to run it at the start. And it basically follows the synopsis straight through. It's him coming back, trying to run the sandwich shop. Can he run the sandwich shop? We shall see. And by the end, the cast of the other chefs finally understand the way he's trying to run it and connect with him better. But there's all those trials trying to get it where he wants it. That's what it was. That's what the plot was. That's what the synopsis was. So it followed it really well. So I gave it a 1 because it did exactly what it was trying to do.
Yeah. I try to look at this plot with that trailer vibe, because when I watched the trailer, I was like, the plot seems very self-explanatory. And then with the plot, they try to add like they try to connect you with personal issues with each character. And I felt like those personal issues just got lost with just that overarching plot. And then it just became more of a mess near the middle, and it recovered itself kind of at the end. But overall, I just couldn't. The plot was just, you got the simplified plot, but then when they try to add undertones of like other characters' side stories, I just didn't like it to the overall. So I gave it a 0.75. And I think the best part about the plot was that they tried to make a little humorous, like they added bits and pieces of story that was a little humorous. They like lighten the mood, because everything was just yelling. It was just extreme yelling, I felt like, the whole time throughout the plot.
I agree. Carmy and Richie were button heads the whole damn time. Carmy could not get Richie to follow anything that he wanted.
That was one thing that in the plot really was irritating. I think it took when Richie was talking to Tina outside, and Tina's like, this is good. This is good. This is so much better. You just need to like do it. And he was like, nah, screw it.
Yeah. Episode, what, 6?
Yeah, episode 6. It took till then to like do that. And that's one thing about Tina. I'm like, okay, she's trying to make this character better, trying to be better at this. I really hated that dynamic in the plot with Tina and Sydney. That was a real just butting head. I'm better than you. I've been here longer. It's like, no, shut up. Shut up. Like, none of these characters could humble themselves a bit, except like Marcus. Marcus was like the only one who like tried to learn and be humbled.
Agreed. Marcus actually wanted to try to learn. So he took the books and really got into what Carmy was trying to do, but he's the only one.
Yeah. So that's why I give the plot a 0.75.
I get it.
Acting.
I did end up giving that a 1.
I gave it a 0.5.
I felt like the intense scenes showed intensity, and I did enjoy Jeremy Allen White's performance. I didn't like his character very much. I was not a big fan of Carmy, but his performance was done really well. And Richie being his whatever you want to call him, he was stuck up. This is the way that we've always done it. This is how it's going to be done. We're not listening to you, Carmy, trying to convince the rest of the staff to be the same way. I thought his performance was done really, really, really well. I took away the character and just focused on the acting, and I thought the acting throughout the cast was done stupendously. It's just I couldn't connect with a lot of the characters. So the acting was great, but their character not so much.
See, I connected with Carmy a little bit. I like Jeremy White's acting. Like, I loved him in Shameless. Philip was by far the best character in that show, hands down. I watched all 11 seasons, and to be honest, Philip was by far the most outstanding character. I never really cared for his sisters. I never really cared for his brothers. But Philip was like the one I really wanted to know his story throughout Shameless. So when you did Carmy, it reminded me of Philip to a certain degree, but it was more on the fact that this character felt like it was just a different side of Philip. So in the acting aspect, I really just felt like I was watching another Philip. I love that, but also I was disappointed. I was disappointed that I was seeing another Philip who was just a little angry, a little philosophical, who's learned a little bit, got the shit kicked out of him, and learned from it. And then Richie Eben, the acting was good for being what he had to be, a jackass. We'll say it. He was a jackass, and he did well. But when it was the points of like him trying to be somber and like low toned, I felt like that it could have been a little more. And then I just could not connect with the acting from Sydney. Like Ao just, for me, just did not work. It just felt like the character was, they were just trying to force this character in, and her acting was like, yeah, she vibed with the group, but she's got to make that character work with the other characters. And I never felt that. I never felt like that character should have been there.
I disagree with that because the way that Sydney was brought into the show, she's a starter chef. She just barely got done with a catering business that flopped, and now she's trying to get into a kitchen to develop her skills. And the way she portrayed Sydney's inexperience and her wanting to show Carmy that she could help him improve, but she wasn't fully confident in herself, was portrayed beautifully. She came in timid, not really knowing how things worked, and then by the end, she had the power of a sous chef. She's like, "These are the things that I think should happen, and I really need you to listen to what I'm saying because this will make your kitchen run." But Carmy doesn't want to listen because he's ignorant. So I thought that I loved Sydney. I loved her acting. I loved Io. She did an amazing job showing that Sydney was a first-time chef. Just coming out of a flop catering service, and because her service flopped, she didn't feel like she was good enough until she got into this kitchen with Carmy, who was rated as the top chef, and she wanted to show him that she could do this, and she did an amazing job. I fully believe she did an amazing job.
You know, when you talk about that, I think I'm going to bring my acting up because of how you said that. I'm going to bring it to a 0.75, not to a 1. No, because the disconnection from the other characters and the repetitiveness of Carmy. But I'll bring it to
Understandable.
I'll bring it to a 0.75.
I think Carmy is the way he is because Jeremy White really is a typecast. His character is the same in everything that he plays. And since he played Philip for so long, I don't think he knows how to get out of that character. So he's pretty much a typecast. That's why his character was the way he was.
Which hurts him
But
so much.
yeah, it does hurt. It really does hurt. But I've never actually watched Shameless, so I can say that this is the first time I've seen Jeremy White play the way he played because I never actually watched Shameless.
Yeah, Shameless was like he was like a teenager when he started the show, and he grew with it over a decade. So it's like he developed that character so well. I think that's what happened with him. He got typecast, and it sucks because he's a really good actor. It's just they're gonna typecast him probably for his career. He's gonna be that slum dude who's never gonna mount to anything, and he's gonna have to grow like exponentially throughout the story.
More than likely.
It sucks. And I hate that about acting. Like they do typecasting so much.
Oh yeah.
It's bad. It's so bad. Character development.
0.75.
I give it a 1.
I couldn't. The only characters to develop were the supporting cast. The two main guys, Carmy and Richie, nothing until the last episode, maybe 2 episodes. Sydney had her development throughout. She had a pretty good development because she was trying to show Carmy her skills. She came in timid, and then by the end, she was, "No, listen, Carmy, this is how it's going to work. Like, if you listen to this, you will succeed." But there wasn't much there as far as Richie. He did not have any development until after he got stabbed in the ass by Sydney. And then he went out, got his stitches and whatnot. And then after that, that's when he started to kind of humble a little bit. And then after getting a talk with Tina, that's when he finally opened up and started listening to what Carmy had to say. But that wasn't until episode 7, 6, 7, whatever it was. It wasn't until the end of the series, which I hate that. That's not development. The biggest development that happened in this entire show was Tina. She had absolutely refused to put on the apron, refused to listen to what Sydney had to tell her. This is my station, was her thought. This is my station. I know what I'm doing. Get out of my face. And then Sydney started showing her some little tricks to get the potatoes going, to taste the potatoes. When she finally got the sauce right and then put it in the potatoes and tasted it and then added just a little bit of that spice, then put it on the tasting table for Sydney to taste. And she's like, okay, get it over with. Tell me it's shit. And then Sydney tastes it and says, no, that's good. Good job. Keep going. That's when Tina finally broke out of this comfort zone that she had when she was working for Mikey and actually started to work with Carmy and work with Sydney and get this system that Carmy wanted to set up. And that's why she was able to go to Richie and say, this shit works. You just have to trust it, because she's never seen the process go as well until she actually opened her eyes and followed what was expected of her. She had an amazing development. Marcus, I loved him. He was never super arrogant. And when Carmy first entered, he was interested in wanting to learn how to develop his skills, and he did. He took the books that Carmy had published. He took some other books to learn how to make the sweets and dishes, and he took the time to finally figure out the perfect dessert, and he did. And that's when Carmy shit all over him and smacked it out of his hand. But I mean, I can understand why. There was a lot of fucking pressure on Carmy on that, and he didn't have the things that he needed to get the orders out that needed to be taken out. But when throughout the whole show, Marcus is continuously trying to get Carmy to try his different desserts, and Carmy praises him on the stuff that he brings out because he just keeps learning, and I love that. But I really would have loved to seen more development in Carmy and Richie, but there just wasn't. Carmy, he didn't have an aha moment until episode 8, after Marcus had left and Sydney had left, and he was left with not very much. And then he got the envelope finally, because Richie finally gave it to him, even though Richie had found it in episode 2. Finally got the envelope from Mikey that told him how to make the spaghetti, but really in the spaghetti there was money in all the sauce cans that helped them get out of debt finally.
Yeah.
Carmy didn't get his aha moment until that scene when he looked at the card and started making the famous family spaghetti, and then he found the money. But other than that, there was just no development except for Richie in the last 3 episodes. I don't like that. They need to develop throughout to make it a good series, and there just wasn't any.
The first moment that I noticed Carmy actually growing was that when he was talking to his sister, Sugar, and she was like, "Are you going?" And they're talking about going to like a program about this whole thing, and he's like, "Yeah, I'm going." And he actually took himself and went there. I think it was like episode 1. Episode 2, he went to the first meeting. And then by episode 8, he actually got out and actually spoke about his whole brother killing himself, the drug addiction, his whole thing about it, and talked about his story. And that was very enlightening to see that he took that and was like trying to recover and actually go through the program of this whole ordeal. And on top of that, when him and his sister were trying to find those tax information stuff, they started yelling at each other in the office. And then he's like, I don't know how to talk. I don't know how to care about you if I can't care about myself. So I'm just being honest with you. I want to care about you, and I'm going to try, but I don't know how to care about myself. So he talks about it in episode 8 where he's like, I idolized my brother. The best times we ever had were cooking. And then he felt the resentment towards him because he was always banned from the kitchen, never could go into the restaurant. So he showed to his brother, fuck you, I'm going to do this. Bust his ass, bloody hands, cracked hands, oily hands. But, he had a development that wasn't throughout. It was like the last 3 to 4 episodes, like you said. And it's not the greatest, but it's like, it was there. You could see it. Richie, on the other hand, there was nothing. Like you threw a bone to him, and he missed it by a mile. I actually found one of my favorite developments with Carmy, him and Uncle Jimmy. When him and Uncle Jimmy had that heart to heart about Carmy's dad, and it was just like it just felt so real that Carmy never knew his father, and he resented not knowing his father, because Mikey kind of like raised him, so he was dealing with that type of trauma. Like you said, the supporting cast, top notch. Tina was so good with her development. Tina knocked it out of the park throughout the whole story. Marcus, I loved his pastries. I loved his obsession with donuts. I loved it. It brought so much joy to me that it was like, I think it was like episode 4 or 5. He actually, like, they showed people making donuts and he was just standing outside the window looking at donuts. I was like, oh, so innocent. I love that he put all the pictures on the wall of Carmi's work, and he just wanted to make something like the plum dessert, but he knew he could never get that. So he wanted to make it out of a donut.
I loved how Carmi explained to Marcus the process to make that plum dessert. How it took 12 chefs to make that one dish.
Which is insane. So insane. I loved Gary Sweeps Woods, the guy who ran the counter. Yeah, his development was very small, but you felt like you got closer with that character. And man, he was just like, yeah, I played baseball. And it's like, you played baseball? What? Like, you learn more and more about these side characters than I think in any other show. You look at the side characters. You have, let's see, what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 guys. 7 guys in a restaurant. You got to get to know them through these episodes. And I felt like the main 6, 7, you got to know, except Richie. Richie's just a douche. We'll always agree on that. Richie's just the biggest douchebag in this show.
Dude, he was so hard to watch. I was just like, God, Carmi, get rid of him.
I know Carmi and Richie had this brotherly relationship that was blooming as children, but now it's like it's estranged because of the fact that he went away. And I loved in the beginning when Richie was like, well, I know I can run this restaurant. And then Carmi's like, then why didn't he give it to you? The development there is like, ooh, Carmi already knows that he's like, I'm here for a reason. I'm not here to fuck shit. I'm here to do it. And that's when it started, but then it didn't really blossom till like later, like almost halfway, 2/3 into the series. But I still gave it a 1 because I loved the development as a whole. Because like Marcus developed, Tina developed. I just loved it. I just loved how these guys developed. Even Sugar, she like realized that Carmi is actually trying to better himself by going to these classes, and she's like stressing about the fact that she has to take care of her family and everyone, and try to make sure that Carmi's actually not going to kill himself.
Yeah, the only reason I had to drop it is because Carmi and Richie didn't have enough development in my opinion.
Makes sense. It makes total sense. Sound and music.
0.5.
I gave that a 0.75.
I just didn't feel anything with the music, Like, I enjoyed the sounds of the sizzling on as people are cooking and the dough being made and like the sounds of the kitchen. But as far as music, there was no music that connected me to the scene. The biggest thing in music that got me to connect to a scene was when Carmi was getting overloaded in episode 7 with all the tickets that just kept coming in, and he's freaking out trying to get people to do their things, and he can't get people to do what he needs them to do, and so he freaks out. Like, that was the only scene that really got me connected through music. Other than that, I just couldn't. 8 episodes worth, and as far as I could tell, there just wasn't anything that pulled me in music wise. So I couldn't really. I feel like I was being generous with the 0.5, and I think I just like it because I love the sound of the kitchen.
I found that throughout the whole show, they played like different artists throughout the show, and one artist that stuck out to me was John Mayer. And it was, I think they were starting to play that one when they all, at one of the end of the days, they all just sat down and ate. It was after Tina got reviewed by Sydney about the potatoes, and they all just sat down and was starting to eat, and you could just feel the warmth of like a John Mayer song coming in, and it was just like, oh, this feels so good. I loved the sizzling sounds of the kitchen. I love the transitions with like there was like some little jazz with like I think it was one of the scenes where they transitioned from heat, like the embers to like Marcus grating zesting oranges over the cake. And it was just like, oh, it's so good. I really liked it. I like the overall. There's nothing that stood out to me except that John Mayer song in like episode 5. But like overall, I really did enjoy the sounds of the kitchen, the hustle and bustling, and I felt like it was just good to me. It wasn't amazing, it was good.
I just feel like for something with intense scenes like this had with Carmi trying to get the kitchen going, trying to get people to listen to him, they could have brought music to the table that also helped pull you into the scene. Because if you don't have the music, all you have is the acting, and you can't always rely on that. And unfortunately, this did not meet expectations to help pull audiences in with its music.
Cinematography.
0.75?
I give it a 1.
Really?
Yeah, I give it a 1 because I loved the transitional shots they did with the food. I love the close-ups with the cutting of the food. I loved the stirring when they were mixing stuff in the bowls. I love the close-ups to like the cakes and such. I loved episode 7 because episode 7 was a one shot. They did that in one take. They did that all in a 20-minute take, in an 18-minute take. That was all just one time and they went for it. And it was so good. I love the transitions. I love the panning. I actually didn't mind the sharp cuts they did throughout the episodes. It was actually a very smart choice because of how like the show ran. It was like all this stuff and then sudden stop, go. And I loved the close-ups on the food. It was just so good. It was crisp, it was clean. I really enjoyed close-up shots of Carmi. I love the shots they did when they went heart to heart in that back alley. When they all each like Carmi always had a heart to heart with Sydney, and then Marcus and Carmi had a heart to heart. It was so good. I felt like the camera was like top notch throughout the whole series.
I enjoyed the close-ups of the food. Those that is what brought me up to a 0.75. I wasn't a huge fan of the cuts. I can see why you like the cuts between scenes, but I felt it was too much. It was done a lot throughout this series. Not just a few per episode. It was almost every transition into a new scene was a dark cut and then come back in. I didn't like that. I did really enjoy what you're talking about with going into the alleys and having the heart to hearts, and basically everything throughout the cinematography was done really well. I just was not a big fan of the quick cuts
Yeah.
to stop the scene and start a new scene. They did it too much in my opinion.
I really did enjoy like the close-ups, and that's what gave me the 1 was just the food shots. They were just so spectacular.
Agreed. They were very well done.
Directing.
I had to give this a 0.5.
I give it a 0.75.
I was going to. But then I thought about it and I was like, I don't like the way they ran Carmi's character. I enjoyed the acting, like I said, but I could not connect with his character, nor could I connect with Richie at all. Acting was stupendous, character sucked. And I feel like that had a lot to do with the directing. I feel like he told Carmi, "This is what I'm expecting out of your character, and you're going to deliver." I felt like it was kind of forced and not letting Jeremy White actually explore a character. I feel like it's the typecast thing where this is how you're known and this is how I want you to portray this character as well. I don't feel like he gave him very much room to experiment with Carmi's character. I couldn't really connect with this show. I just couldn't. I was not impressed with how high reviews it got. I thought it was going to be just spectacular, and it didn't meet my expectations, and it saddened me.
I really enjoyed the show. Will I watch season 2? I'll see what the reviews are. But in the directing category, I felt he typecast Richie so hard to the point where I hated the Chicago man in general. The directors really told Richie he nailed the character. A douchebag from Chicago. Like straight up, he picked a guy from South Side Chicago and just went for it. And it was like, great, fantastic. But you told him to literally live the character, it felt like. And he lived it. And it was annoying. And it became to the point where I was like, okay, you're pushing this character too much. You're doing great, but like, come on. You're making this you're beating the horse dead here. You're trying to be this like, don't change the neighborhood. Don't change the way things are. We got to keep the old traditions. It's like, what traditions? Like, shut up. The director tried to keep this character going, but by episode 6, you realize that the character was not going to last. He was not lasting, and the director had no idea what to do. So he decided to flip the switch and go, hey, I'm going to call the cops on those douchebags that Sydney was giving sandwiches to. And then episode 7, he starts trying to be the working man. The director was like, yeah, you're going to step in and do something, and then get stabbed in the ass. So, take that as you will. And I thought that was the funniest moment when he got stabbed.
I completely agree. That I was just like, "Ha! You
He's like,
deserve
I got
that,
stabbed.
motherfucker."
I got stabbed, motherfucker. I got stabbed. I loved Neil, the decision, what they did with Neil. Like it was his character was so funny. I loved him. The director, that was a plus on him. They made a good character out of that. But Carmy, I felt like it was like I said in acting, just felt like another Philip. And it hurt me a lot because like I loved Philip, but now it's like the director just kept him like that. And I'm like, the only difference is that he's not like book smart. He's more like street smart in the cooking world. And that's really it. And it hurt so much. And I'm personally like throughout the whole thing, I didn't really like the direction of how like overall the kitchen was near the end because it just became an absolute shit show. And the director's trying to show like, oh, this whole conundrum, everything ends. And it's like, yeah, I get that. But it was just a mess. And he was trying to pick up pieces because Richie tried to hop in. And it's like, no, you're making this Richie thing like so annoying.
Can we talk about the ending for a minute? Like, what was the director's thoughts on that? Oh yeah, so I hid millions of or hundreds of thousands of dollars in all these fucking spaghetti cans, and the only way you're gonna figure it out is this stupid recipe card,
Yeah, that was
and it's behind the lockers, so you're not even gonna fucking find it. Like, oh, and by the way, all this money is gonna help with your finances by the end. So you didn't have to go through all these fucking trials to get this shop where you want it. All the money's right here. You can pay everything off and get it where you want it. What the
yeah.
fuck? Right at the end. Like, I didn't like the way that went.
No, that was kind of weird. But now that's how they're going to lead into season 2. Season 2 is going to be the up and coming new shop. The Bear.
The Bear.
The Bears. Yeah.
Dude, when he was outside, they're like, what are we gonna name it? And then he was putting the tape on it. I'm like, oh, I bet you it's gonna be called The Bear.
Yeah, no. It was very cliche cuz in the later episodes you heard the word, "Let's go the bear. Let's go bear."
Yeah, you didn't realize it until you kind of listened to their last name as Berzotto, and then you're like, "Oh,
Yep.
Bear makes sense. I get it
Yeah.
now."
So, I don't know what the director was thinking. I have no idea. Attraction. 0.75.
0.5. I was going to 0.75, but the only attraction that was in this was the fact that they were in the kitchen. I loved that they were in the kitchen. I loved watching the kitchen scenes. But that's all there were. That's the only place there were. There were a few shots outside of the kitchen, like going to the meeting or going to Sydney's apartment or going to the party because they had to pay their uncle off the loan that he had given Mikey. But really most of the time was spent in the kitchen, which makes sense cuz that's what this story's about. But I would have liked to explore Chicago a little more than they did. And most of it's just shot in this kitchen with dark ambiances and some light, and the biggest attraction I had was watching them make the food. That's it.
I give it a 0.75 because the kitchen developed you I remember the beginning, the first episode, that kitchen looked like fucking shit. Holy crap, that kitchen looked like
Well, yeah, they didn't improve it until they got the
yeah,
fucking sea.
but I but the attraction was like I love the fact that the kitchen developed like very like quickly after the sea. It was like episode 3 or something. And then you saw like the kitchen looking nicer, things are trying to get repaired. Neil trying to be not a douchebag and fix shit and a dumbass. But it's like I loved the fact that the kitchen was getting so much better and these guys were developing their cooking skills immensely. And it was just so good. And I just kept watching for that. Episode 7 kind of like initially I was like, "Oh, I really like this." And then episode 7 came and I was like, "Oh, this is a train wreck and uncomfortable." And then the ending was just like really really in the spaghetti. So the attraction went down to a 0.75 because I really liked it overall. It was just the fact that like small things made me go, "Okay, you lost my interest for not going." I'm not like season 2, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know how I feel after watching this.
My main attraction came from watching Marcus grow and watching freaking Neil be the dumbass fun.
Yeah.
He was just fun. He was a fun character, and he brought humor to the darker side of the
No, he did.
story.
It was so good. I love the humor. Dialogue.
I did give dialogue a 1.
I gave it a 1 as well.
It had some I I I didn't write down any quotes because I didn't really find anything that really popped to me, but there was so much going on, and I know that kitchens are run with strict, this is how it's going to go, and this is the daily operation of this kitchen. And Carmi trying to bring that into this kitchen by telling everybody, yes chef, we're all chefs, so yes chef, it's always going to be yes chef, was really well done. I loved the humor that Neil brought, and I loved Marcus's soft persona. His soft dialogue that he gave, he was never angry. He was just calm, wanting to show Carmi everything that he could do. Even after Carmi swatted his donut out of his hands, he still calmly walked out, took off his apron. I mean, he did throw the tray of sweets onto the table, but he still calmly took off his apron and walked out instead of blowing up on everybody. So I really liked a lot of the dialogue in here. I liked the way it was run. I liked the way it flowed. And it was enjoyable to watch just because I felt like you could connect with trying to run a kitchen. Basically how it was.
Yes. I liked a few of the lines in like one of my favorite lines was when Carmi was talking to Sugar, his sister, and it was like that moment where they were sitting there and he was like, "I don't know how to express my emotions if I don't care about myself. I don't know how to care about yours if I don't know how to care about for me." It was just very deep. I thought that was a very very good moment. I also found that relationship with Sydney and Richie in the car when they went the first time they went to pick up stuff very interesting because he's like he opened up about his 4-year-old daughter, and he's like, "Yeah, this is my daughter," and he was stumbling his words, so it's like you felt the realness in the dialogue there that he was like, "Yeah, this is my daughter, and I'm trying not to be a fuck up for her," but he was still a fuck up like throughout the story. But like you felt that in his voice, and it was just one of those down to earth real moments. And then with Jimmy, Uncle Jimmy, when they were talking about Carmi's dad, he was like, "Yeah, I haven't talked to that son of a bitch in 20 years. Talked about some stupid shit or something." The realness in the dialogue. It wasn't just like, "Oh, it was the It was no, it was like, it was drugs, gambling, or drinking." It just felt so good to hear like the realness in the dialogue, and like you said in the kitchen, yes, chef, behind, corner, like like the real things you hear in a kitchen. It was just so good. I really found this dialogue to be actually like very well done.
I agree. See, I didn't really write any down, like I said, but I knew that there were some dingers in there. I just forgot to write them down. And it's not that, not specifically I forgot to write them down. They didn't stick with me like other quotes did. I liked the intensity of the kitchen talk because I know that kitchens can be very stressful.
Yes. Scenery.
0.25.
Ooh. I gave it a 0.75.
I couldn't. Again, they were just in the kitchen. There's no scenery there. Sure, they're cooking, but that's not scenery. That's more into attraction. There's no scenery. You didn't see any of Chicago. You saw 4 buildings, 5. But other than that, there's nothing. Except for when they go out in the street and Richie fires his gun and tells the nerds to stop fighting, or when the police come and pick up the group that are hanging out in front of the store. Like, other than that, you don't see anything. They don't even go to a farmer's market or a market to buy product. Like, there's nothing. The only thing you see is the kitchen.
I I find that the kitchen that was the main point of the show was the kitchen, and that was the main scenery we were going to see, because to be honest, like, yeah, I wish we saw like a market or something, or Carmi actually brought in a little bit of his elegance in the fine dining world and actually went out and got some ingredients and such and actually did something. But I gave it this thing of the show is about a kitchen, and the development of the kitchen grew with the scenery. Yes, you saw only a few buildings, maybe the church, but I felt like it was good, but it wasn't strong. The kitchen was the main thing about the whole story, but it needed a little more. It needed more out there. I like the fact in the show that they actually went out and did that cooking thing when the building lost power and gas, and you've just felt like you just saw the street a little bit. It was nice, but I give it that 0.75 because it was a kitchen that had to be highlighted for the show because that's what it was. And we were dealing with the intensity of what a real kitchen is. So that's why I give it the 0.75.
Makes sense. Th- there's nothing. In my opinion, there's just nothing there. Them cooking in the kitchen, I understand, but that's all they show, and I'd have just liked to seen more.
Yeah, yeah. And I see where you're coming from, and I totally agree from you on your point of view. Recommend.
A 0.5.
I give it a 0.75.
I was expecting so much more than what I was given, and I just felt like with how they could have put so much more into this story. They could have ran with it in a different way. And with how being annoying Richie is, I can't even express how much I just hated Richie. He needed to go. From episode 1, I was like, "Carmy, get that motherfucker out of your kitchen. This is your kitchen. Run it your way. So get him out and run it." But he was there for the whole damn series, and I had to listen to that bullshit the whole time. I just I wanted this to go a different, not in exactly a different way. It's just this they focus so much on Carmi's anxiety when the whole story is supposed to be about him taking over this sandwich shop instead of going through his anxiety. The synopsis doesn't mention anything about him being anxious or anything about problems. It literally just says he's a world renowned chef coming home to take over a family shop. So just do it. But they added all of this extra bleh that I just didn't connect with. And I'm just like, I understand working in a kitchen is stressful. I get that. I've seen it. I've never worked in a kitchen, but I've watched plenty of shows that are Food Network shows and stuff that show how stressful a kitchen is. I understand that. But the if they're going to show all this anxiety in his family and in him, they need to portray that in a synopsis cuz that's not what I was expecting to see. It's not what I was expecting to go into to watch this. And I just I don't feel like I can happily tell someone, "Yes, go watch this show," cuz I didn't enjoy it. I can be honest. I really didn't enjoy watching this show. It took me 3 weeks to get through 8 episodes, 8 30-minute episodes at that. So, I didn't like it.
I I see where you're coming from. I really do. I really do see where you are coming from in the aspect of, yes, this show you didn't connect with it well. And that's fine. Like this show was not meant for everyone. And like for me, I gave it a 0.75. I gave it a 0.75 because of the fact that thought that this show had substance where the cooking and the shots and the story had its flavor, had its volume, but I really, really thought that Carmi overall was like a decent character. It wasn't amazing, but it was decent. And I found that with all the side characters, I could say like this was a an enjoyable experience to a point. Richie was so bad, like as a character. I cannot like I will never recommend the show just for him because it was just terrible. But like this story, like I love all the side characters. I love the environment because I've worked in an environment like that. And I just love the intensity of it. But for the character of Richie and some of the side stories that got messed up, I'm only going to recommend it to a 0.75. Very niche audience, and that's really it. Overall, I gave it an 8.
Mine stated at 6.75. Nothing changed.
The show, The Bear, has a very unconventional styling with its 20 to 40-minute episodes. It was unconventional, and this show is about cooking to a different style where you take a fine dining restaurant Michelin star cook and bring him into a Chicago hustle and bustle diner style place. And this story, the characters, it was good and okay. It wasn't phenomenal, but it was obviously there's substance there to make it good.
Overall, I was pretty unimpressed with this film or this series. Didn't go the way I was expecting it would, and with how much praise it had gotten from other sources, I felt like I was really going to go into something and enjoy it, and I didn't. I absolutely hated how unsupportive Richie was towards Carmi, and all he was trying to do was make the place better, make it some money because obviously it wasn't making anything. I didn't like that there was no development from the main cast until the last few episodes. Really? You're the main two guys. Develop. Come on, show me something. Nothing. All the development came from the supporting cast, which shouldn't happen. I thought this could have been taken in another direction that would have fulfilled my expectations, and it just didn't. I was overall just disappointed in the way the show had gone.
As we're wrapping up, we are going to be talking about next week's episode, which is a Leonardo DiCaprio and Mark Wahlberg film, came out in 1995, Basketball Diaries. Now, Ben, with this trailer, I don't know what to expect. I really don't. Like, watching it, I was very intrigued. I was super intrigued on what the story might be and what's going to happen. And I'm excited to see what young Leonardo DiCaprio is going to bring to the table. But it does bring that 90s style trailer. It was it's super 90s, like so cringy, but you know, it's rough. But I give it a 7.
I was very confused by this trailer. I don't know what the heck this story is about because it was just all over the place. It had Leonardo DiCaprio running around shirtless. It had him holding on to a basketball hoop doing pull-ups. It had Mark Wahlberg shirtless. It had them jumping into a pond. It had them running around in rain. I don't know what to expect from this. Apparently this is based on a true story. I had no idea until I watched the trailer and it says based on a true story. And I'm like, oh, okay, cool. I have no idea what to expect from this, but I do like Leo. I do like Mark. And I think he did an amazing job in his younger years, especially with What's Eating Gilbert Grape. So I think this might do well. I also gave it a 7.
Yeah, I'm excited to see what this will bring to the table. But as always, guys, we like to thank everyone for listening to this week's episode of the Nerdtaku podcast. Ben, as always, thank you for coming on.
Of course, I absolutely love doing this and can't wait to do more. Thanks for joining us, guys.
Thank you for joining us, guys. As always, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, tell your friends, tell your neighbors about the Nerdtaku podcast. Yeah, updating you on Instagram. We'll be posting on Spotify and YouTube. So thanks, guys. Take care. Have a good week.
Have a good one, guys.